Giannis kind of officially, unofficially on the market. I think the Spurs are the best landing spot for him, even though they're reportedly not going to get in the mix midseason. Agree, disagree? They're ready to create a super team over there in San Antonio?
I actually agree. I think that San Antonio is my favorite landing spot for Giannis. I know there's probably like a dozen teams you can make an argument for. But the idea of seeing Giannis and Wemby, I probably said this on the show, a million times. Yeah. It's just like, that's a dream to me. In my opinion, you go out, you make the trade, and then you figure the rest out later.
Yeah, I mean, so for people that need a catch-up, as we kind of inch closer to the trade deadline Thursday, February 5th, it's that Giannis and the Bucks reportedly have both kind of come to some sort of understanding where it's like, all right, they could see a future without him. He's now prepared for a future outside of Milwaukee, whether it comes at the deadline or in the offseason. For the sake of fun and content, go ahead.
He did not ask for a trade.
Yeah,
don't
get it twisted.
Don't put that out there.
He
did not ask for a trade.
He did not ask for a trade.
He would never do that.
Yeah, he's the most loyal guy. His teammates all stink, and the fans hate him. Anyway, yeah, go watch last week's episode for more on that. But so it's going to be tough to get Giannis somewhere else midseason because of how much he makes and in an apron world and all that. But I think the way I've looked at it all year is that if you're going to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I'm sure most of the league is going to at least check in, but for my money, if you're going to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's currently injured, should, if his team's winning, be back for the playoffs, then you have him for all of next year at the least. Then he's extension eligible this summer for up to $275 million, all that. But if you trade for him, you should be a team that can genuinely compete for a championship after trading for him this year and next year at the very least. You should be a team that has enough in terms of young talent and draft capital that you can go out and get Giannis and still have some young talent and draft capital left over after, so you haven't completely sold the farm for him. And you should be a team that doesn't have to completely gut your team to get him. And I don't think there are many teams that can check all of those boxes. Some that would be the Thunder. Obviously, we've talked about it. The Pistons, the Rockets, and the Spurs. There might be a couple others, but those are the four that come to mind for me. The Thunder, as I've said before, Sam Presti wouldn't make these kind of moves when the Thunder were heading up the mountain. I highly doubt he makes it now that they're at the summit. The Pistons, we're going to talk about them later. I can't see them making this kind of deal. And also, part of it might be, Giannis has some control when we're talking about the extension. I don't know if Detroit's where he wants to be. Then we're down to Houston and San Antonio. If Houston's willing to part with Şengün, maybe, but I don't think they'd be willing to do that. And then we're left with San Antonio. And the trade proposal I came up with, we can put it on the screen, would see them part with Dylan Harper. I know that's tough to stomach, but you're talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo here. You're going to trade something for him. Dylan Harper, Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson, essentially a salary filler, even though both those guys have been really important pieces for them in what's looking like a 55-plus win year for them. And then 3 first-round picks. This year, the pick would probably be Atlanta's, a 2029 Spurs pick. And then in 2031, the best of the Sacramento or San Antonio pick, which could be very valuable. So, first of all, what say you? If you're the Bucks, do you take that deal? If you're the Spurs, do you make that deal? And what kind of team do you think the Spurs would have after all that?
It's a great question. Honestly, looking at the board, I think, looking at also some of the reporting and some of the offers that are maybe out there, maybe not out there for Giannis, this feels like kind of a dream offer if you're the Bucks. Like, you get 3 first-round picks. You get Dylan Harper, who's like a legit blue-chip prospect. Mm-hmm. He's not shooting so well as of late, but, that's a guy that I think you're looking for in any Giannis trade. Can I get a cornerstone guy? I think Dylan Harper's that guy. Keldon Johnson, also young player on a, reasonable contract, really coming on of late. Like, honestly, kind of a guy that if I'm San Antonio, I probably maybe don't want to give up in that trade. I think it's a great trade for Milwaukee. From a San Antonio perspective, I think, honestly, you have so much draft capital. You've still got Castle. You've still got Fox. You've still got Wembanyama. Like, this is a legit team. Like you said, they're one of the rare teams that checks all those boxes. They could go out and get Giannis and still have additional draft capital. Yeah. And, guys like Vassell.
Carter Bryant was a good young player.
100%. Yeah. Like, still have assets to, make a move around because, the one thing about the team you're going to have in San Antonio after that trade is, they already need shooting, and this kind of zaps them of, one of their shooters.
Point, yeah.
So I think after making this trade, they still have the assets to go out and get a shooter or two and, really build around these guys. And then from a team perspective, I'd be fascinated to see if Giannis, he does kind of talk the talk of a guy that isn't demanding the ball, doesn't need to be the number one guy. If he goes to San Antonio, he won't be. right off the bat, this is Wembanyama's team. So it would be very fascinating to see like that dynamic, play out.
Yeah. I think you made a good point with the shooting, or the lack thereof, with what that team would look like. I think there'd be a lot of pressure on Devin Vassell's shoulders to shoot a lot and shoot well, which he has been doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'd be looking at a starting five of De'Aaron Fox, Stefan Castle, Devin Vassell, Victor Wembanyama, Giannis Antetokounmpo, or flip-flop them, whatever. But that's your front court. It'd be like 3 really dynamic guards and just 2 insanely talented giants, generational players in the front court. They'd be thinner, like their depth would be gutted a little bit, but that starting five, for my money, is as good as anyone in the leagues. You'd have 2 superstar-type players kind of leading the charge. You'd need some shooting, yeah. The defense should be good. I just think they would check so many boxes. And then, again, it's like, even if you take into account everything I said last week, again, go watch those other videos about how, teams might not be as willing to pay $275 million for Giannis's age 33 to 36 seasons as Milwaukee would be able to, or be willing to, even if for some godforsaken reason the Spurs made this deal and for some reason Giannis ended up not there in the long haul. I know that would be devastating because they gave up 3 picks and Dylan Harper and all this, but like, you would have a Giannis Wemby pairing for a year and a half, 2 playoff runs, and then again, you would still have Wemby and Castle and Vassell and Carter Bryant coming, and a lot of draft capital. So, like, I just think they, to me, are the obvious team if they want to, because, again, the reporting is that they're actually not going to make a bid mid-season. Maybe it changes in the offseason, but mid-season they won't. But if there's a team that I think should and that, like, can check all those boxes, like, it just has to be San Antonio.
Absolutely, and I do think, to your point, they've kind of... Like, I think they have reached a basement level that is, a lot higher than it used to be. Like, I just think, like, barring several significant injuries, like, this is not a team that is back in the lottery looking to add. So if you're looking, at the guys you have, like, you got to make some kind of movement at some point if you're San Antonio. And I think the quicker you can move on that, getting a guy like Giannis obviously upgrades your team, but the quicker you can move on that, then the quicker you have a sense of like what you're looking at. Like we've seen so many teams kind of, sometimes you hold onto your cards too long. And I think that's, we're still in the early stages of this, but that's certainly something that could happen with San Antonio if you don't, maximize your flexibility while you've got it. Because like you said, you can make this trade and have a ton of tools left to, even improve.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like, you don't want to hold your cards too long. Like, yes, Victor Wembanyama is only in his 3rd season now, but like, hey, next year's the last year of his rookie scale contract, and then he'll be on a max, and we know how it is with the aprons, and like once you got multiple players taking up that percentage of the cap, like you want to strike while the iron's hot, and when you have maneuverability, right? And
Absolutely.
like, again, not wishing any ill will. We all hope that Wembanyama has a long, healthy career, but we know the history of guys that big. That's another thing too. Like, I don't think as patient as you want to be, you don't want to rush into anything short-sighted that damages your long-term future. You also don't want to be the team that just like assumes that this window is going to last forever and we have all the time in the world to figure it out 3 years from now, because you never know.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Wemby and Ja are not the same player, but look at the Memphis Grizzlies. They were on the way up one day, and now they're boom on the way down. So it can happen, and exactly, exactly the point about Wemby is huge too. Even just having bringing in another star caliber player that can kind of pick things up when he's out. Obviously they played well this season without Wembanyama.
Yeah.
But like you've got like that the Fox Vassell Wembanyama trio has been like incredible. And honestly, if you can make a trade to bring in a superstar level player and like you still have like a core 3 guys that you're not going to touch is kind of insane. And I think the longer you wait on making a big trade, you're going to have to sign guys to extensions. You're going to lose that flexibility.
Yeah. I think if they can use one of Harper or Castle with picks and salary filler to get Giannis, I don't understand why you wouldn't make that move. Before we wrap up this segment, quickly on Milwaukee's point of view. Obviously, if you just ask them like in a vacuum, is 3 first-rounders enough? They're going to be like, no, Giannis Antetokounmpo, 3 first-round picks is not enough. But if Milwaukee can get a blue chip prospect, whether it's Dylan Harper or blue chip prospect X from X team, do you think that should be enough for Milwaukee, given that Giannis has a year and a half left on his deal, extension eligible this summer, 1 top prospect, 3 first-round picks? Is that enough, or you think the Bucks should be holding out for like the Godfather, 3 firsts, 2 swaps kind of thing, multiple prospects?
I think the problem with that is just like who's the team that's going to give that, and I just like don't really see there being one. There's no like perfect fit, you know.
Right.
It's like I think you're either looking at a team like San Antonio where you'll get a Dylan Harper, or you're looking at getting like a guy like a you know, if it's a trade with the Knicks that they reportedly weren't interested in, you know, you're taking back Karl Towns, you know, and it's like any other trade for any significant team, you're taking back salary and a guy that's going to be, you know, a win now guy, we'll say, you know? And I just don't think if I'm lucky, I want to be done with this. Like, I need to reset. I'm like, give me a young guy. Like, and I don't know, like, obviously off the top of my head, I can't think of another young blue chip guy that is kind of would be available in these trades. But Dylan Harper is like an excellent prospect.
Yeah.
So I think if you're Milwaukee, maybe you want to, you know, you look at it like, what did Bane get 4 first-round picks? You know, I don't know what the market is at this point, but I think you got to be happy with 3 picks and you know, Keldon Johnson also no slouch. Harrison Barnes, those are guys 2 tradable guys also. They could get you more assets. Like, you know, if you look at it from this perspective, if this trade is, you know, 5 first-round picks and Dylan Harper, are you happy with that? You know, it just in the sense that like you could flip Keldon Johnson and Harrison Barnes for a first-round pick or 2. So if you look at it in that respect, if I got 5 first-round picks and a cornerstone player, or 4 first-round picks and a cornerstone player, I'm happy if I'm Milwaukee there.
I do think the cornerstone player is a big part of it because, you know, as many picks as they can get, they don't necessarily control their own draft picks for a while. And so that's the thing. Like, them being bad won't necessarily help them. They have to rely on other teams' picks once a trade goes through. So getting a young cornerstone that they can actually build around, you know, starting immediately would be a huge thing. And that's why, again, I just think whether it's Harper or Casciaro picks, like the San Antonio angle to me makes too much sense for me to ignore it. And yeah, the Spurs can say they're not interested midseason all they want, but whether it's before the deadline, whether it's in the summer, they just make too much sense for me to not get it done. That I think is, I mean, I don't think, we know Giannis is the biggest name on the market. We'll see whether he actually moves by February 5th. If not, that just gives us another 6 months to talk Giannis trades because we know at some point that shoe is going to drop.
Yeah, so exciting. Let's just hope this drags on for as long as humanly possible, and we'll be talking fake Giannis trades in 10 years.
Like we ended a segment last week. Thanks, Giannis.
Yeah.